Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and welcome to the in-house counsel program and our fourth webinar in this series. My name is Hegriv Khaitan and I'm a partner in Khaitan's corporate M&A practice group. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to this webinar to every one of you, whether you are in our audience in India or around the world. The in-house counsel program is designed to provide training and education in legal operations, business management, and substantive law relevant to general counsel and their in-house counsel teams, as well as a discussion forum on contemporary issues relevant to the in-house community in India. Our subject today is the big issues in 2025, or what are the opportunities and threats that concern Indian in-house counsel. In this slide is the agenda of today's webinar. In summary, we will have an expert panel discussion followed by a Q&A session with audience questions. We have already received several audience questions, and if you do have questions, please submit them using the facility provided in the webinar portal. If we cannot cover all questions during the webinar, we will respond offline by email after the webinar. Also, please note that a copy of the presentation, summary notes of the discussion, and a recording of the webinar will be sent to you after the webinar as a matter of course. As corporate India grows, so too does the in-house counsel community. And as India's dynamic business environment evolves, so too does the demands of Indian counsel. The expectations of in-house counsel from CEOs, boards, and business stakeholders have expanded significantly. GCs are now expected to be strategic advisors, risk managers, and innovation champions while still managing cost, efficiency, and legal compliance. This webinar brings together senior members of in-house community in India to explore the evolving challenges and opportunities facing leaders and members of in-house legal teams and what is redefining the corporate legal function in India. Our discussion will address how legal leaders can demonstrate value in uncertain economic conditions, the skills and capabilities in-house teams must build, and how technology and data are shaping the future of legal service delivery. We will also explore ongoing talent war, the impact of alternate legal service providers, and what law firms must do better to align with client expectations. Everyone who has registered for this webinar should have received by email already a summary of the panel members and their credentials to talk on today's topic. So I will not spend much time introducing them. Suffice to say, they are all experts in this subject matter and qualified to express views on these issues. On our panel today, we are joined by Divya Murthy, General Counsel, Godrej Industries Limited; Mohit Shukla, Managing Director, Legal, Barclays India; Prateek Shroff, Senior Vice President, Investments, Legal, Brookfield. Again, these panel members come from very diverse fields, and we have a perfect panel here with industry, financial services, financial sponsor, banking. So looking for a very rich discussion. So now let's start with our webinar. Let me start with you, Divya and Prateek. Let me ask you, how has the board or CEO's expectation of the GC changed in the last 2, 3 years, especially in terms of strategic input and risk leadership?
So, Pratik, maybe I'll take the lead on this one. Just in, I think a prior life was an easier life for GCs. You were expected to deliver legal services efficiently, do a good job on risk mitigation, handle litigation, and things like that. But increasingly, GCs are now becoming part of the executive teams. So, for example, I am a member of the management committee at Godrej. So the expectation there is not to walk into a meeting and say, this can be done, this can't be done, the law doesn't allow you to do this, but to give thought leadership on many evolving areas of law, to be able to uh, guide or give moral direction to where the company is headed in terms of things like DEI, in terms of things like ESG, on things like data privacy, AI. In all these spheres, you're required to do a lot of thought leadership, be a strategic partner, have a deep understanding of business, and within the framework of the law, give solutions and direction to business. So that I would say the easy life of a GC has evolved a whole lot and become more challenging and difficult. I find my role doing the management committee role or being on the DI council of the group way more challenging, requiring a lot more thought, requiring a lot more research, understanding of what my peers are doing in the industry than the pure legal function that I think traditionally lawyers used to perform.
No,
Yeah,
very
adding,
interesting. Pratik, if you can share some thoughts.
yeah, sure. So adding from what Divya was mentioning, more from a asset manager, financial sponsor lens. One bit, of course, is that I find GCs, and I can speak for Brookfield across the world, a lot more involved in our asset management when we talk about key strategic decisions in the life of an asset. I find myself and people across the floor who wear the same hat are heavily involved in that, more from a risk perspective. And the other key thing I've noticed is I've been here 6 odd years now doing this role, but what I find from the time when as a private practitioner, what we used to see GCs do, like Divya said, the approach has changed. We would see GCs in a room talk more about, oh no, this is a no-go, this is yes, and that's about it. Now we see GCs involved a lot more in the transaction right from the beginning, or in our case, we see I'm involved in transactions even before it actually is in a place where it goes to advisors. So it's not just risk management or risk analysis. I would expand it to say it's more risk underwriting. Effectively, what would be a risk which can be underwritten, and at what value? Because at the end of the day, for a financial sponsor, it's about what value you're paying for an asset. Of course, there are some goes and no goes, and that goes without saying, and people are more aware of that. So that's where I think, from a financial sponsor perspective, the role has broadened quite a bit.
Quite amazing to see and hear both of you. I remember, when I started practice, the role of the GC. First, there wasn't anybody called a GC, but really a law officer in most companies and corporations. And most of their work was to manage some litigation, brief counsel, and that's it. And how it's evolved to such a strategic management role is just fantastic. And we would only read about the role of the GC in multinational corporations, but that's exactly what we are really seeing today. Quite amazing. Coming to you, Mohit, and also if Divya, you can share your views. What are some of the new or unexpected areas in which GC offices are now expected to provide leadership? So, for example, we hear about cyber incidents, ESG disclosures. Are they all within, the GC office, or what other areas?
Oh, absolutely. I think what the hallmark of, and when I speak for myself, I speak for myself in the capacity of doing a country role for legal as opposed to a product role. So the kind of jobs that people like us do essentially touch everything that breathes and lives. in an organization. So just as you said, every day is an opportunity to learn something different. Every day is a challenge because something is staring you in the face that perhaps you've never had the opportunity to look at before. And I think all of us very quickly learn to blink and move forward rather than stay frozen in the headlights, because if we do, it'll just be overwhelming. So very, very new areas in terms of what it means with respect to embedding a cybersecurity framework, for example, into your organization. What does it mean when you're looking at ESG, sustainability? What do you have to do? What frameworks need to be put in place? What policies need to be thought about and embedded? Does everything work the way you expect it as you write it? No. Therefore, the dialogue and the conversation in terms of what's material, what's appropriate, what's practical. And when you think of the practical, what are the mitigants? Because as general counsels, we also learn very quickly that there is no absolute black and white. There is no certainty in most areas of law. Unlike what people would believe, there is the black and white world is very, very rare. So when you're dealing with grays and different shades of grays, you're looking not only at risk, but you're also looking at mitigant, and you're looking at the best possible way to marry commerciality with prudence and move forward. So just as Divya said in response to the previous question, and Prateek also in his own way, you're constantly looking to see what moves the organization forward with the appropriate risk mitigants and prudence. Because if you just said no, you'd be saying no a lot, and you'd be saying no to most things, and that's a no-go. So that doesn't serve anybody's purpose. It doesn't serve a lawyer's purpose either. So you're constantly thinking in terms of what to do. Divya?
Yeah, I think I would look at it from two perspectives, right? One is within the legal function itself, what you do and what is expected and new to do. And then there is outside the legal function, which is all the businesses, which is whom you serve. So I think from the new, and this is expected now that you would have done some analysis of what is the AI tools available, what is the technology to be adopted, and things of that nature, which is one rung of things you have to have in place. The other, like Mohit said, is constant and every day. As an I always thought when I became a GC that okay, this it's going to be kind of straight jacket. You have to manage your situation and stuff. But every day is a new situation. Actually, every hour is a new situation, and all kinds of things come to your doorstep. It's not people pick up the phone and ask you about, and promoters ask you, directors ask you, they ask you about the kind of things which you wouldn't think are legal issues. More often than not, you're not usually addressing legal issues. You're assuaging people about what reputational impact things could have, what impact it could have over operations over a significantly large period of time. It's not that one transaction or one contract that you have to think about. You're thinking way more long term. And I think and it's all kinds of areas, whether it's AI, data privacy, ESG, you name it, crisis management, all of that happens, but you're always thinking about it on a very, very longer term perspective rather than the here and the now. I think that's really what's changed or is interesting for a GC.
Yeah. No, actually, hearing both of you and experiencing it's now a huge responsibility. And, as Mohit was saying, that look, a lot of it is gray. And in a way, the buck stops at the GC because business can very easily say, look, we've put it to the GC. GC has to take a call, and the GC has to either say yes or no. But if it's gray, it's a huge burden to say yes or to say no, and then finally take a call. And as you said, Divya, it's become not just very deep, but also a very wide scope for GCs, which is, I mean, I was just with a promoter yesterday, and he was saying that what really has happened now, my organization just can't function without a GC and legal department. 20 years ago, I thought that this is just a small cost function. Today, it's a very, very essential function. But it's very pleasing to hear how perception of promoters have also changed over a period of time on the role of the GC. Um, let's come back to you, Pratik and Mohit. So, are legal functions expected to deliver more for less? What are the steps which should be taken to improve legal efficiency?
Um, Maybe I'll start more with a bit of an anecdote from the first time when I was moving into an in-house role. So I come from a family of lawyers. When I told my dad that, "Oh, I'm looking to join XYZ company," he said, "You're joining a company? They don't do any, no lawyer does any work in a company. Why are you looking to join a company?" So going back to your point on how the legal function and the perception has changed. On the question, I, at least from uh, a Brookfield perspective, or I see that across financial sponsors, I don't think the expectation is to deliver more for less, but the expectation is definitely to deliver more. Uh, a few areas where I would say where a GC or a legal function helps is overall transaction management. And again, it's not like we are better than the business teams at doing something like that. It's just I find it may just be the way we've been thinking right from law school is just a little more logical in the way that we work through certain steps, or uh, we are better at that. Uh, be it a legal advisor or a commercial advisor or a technical advisor, just sitting with the team, talking through who is best suited for something, uh, running the transaction at the back end, taking strategic steps, or advising the business team on what should be a strategic step and the next step in a transaction. I think that holistic uh, approach to a deal, and to, like I was mentioning earlier, asset management as well. I think that's something which people expect from the legal function for sure.
And what
No,
would
so
you
true.
say, Mohit?
Thank you. No, so true. I think given how quickly the world is evolving and the the amount of proactive and sometimes reactive regulation, for example, that becomes necessary for regulators to issue to one is of course to match what market is doing, one is to protect the market. That base of regulation is something that I think is top of mind in terms of the doing more with less, because, and it's just one example, everything in the world is changing, and you can see how much, given the speed with which things are developing, how much of a catch up even the legislative domain has to do. For example, the regulatory domain I already touched upon in terms of how it responds and reacts to what's happening in the market. That I think is one of, potentially, the way I look at it, uh, the big challenge in terms of having to do more, while obviously what's available to lawyers as they do their jobs in terms of teams, in terms of infrastructure, is not necessarily at pace, because it needs time. So that I think is one of the big things that is a very key component for me in terms of, one is catch up and staying abreast and being able to interpret and incorporate that appropriately into whatever is being done, in terms of business or in terms of enterprise or in terms of entity. So that is one of the biggest things that I think people have to keep on their minds all the time, in terms of just how much of an effort that can be. And many people will probably not appreciate how much of an effort that can be, right? because people will have their business as usual work to do. People will have to deliver on what the commercial commitments are, and yet at the same time make sure they've got an eye out for what's changing and what needs to therefore be brought in terms of that change and embedded very, very quickly. So that I think is one of the biggest challenges in a very, very fast evolving world. We touched upon briefly in this conversation on AI. The digital, of course, has been there for a while. So those tools in terms of how they can help and what they can help us achieve faster are still a bit of a hazy space, if I may use that expression. So I think a lot of us are still grappling with how do we best bring that in to be able to then develop to do justice for what we have to work with.
No, we'll come to the sort of tech section of our questions and the AI, but again, very sort of insightful to know that, it's not more for less, and it's not evolving into that. And that's quite pleasing to know, because if companies and boardrooms and CEOs really want that value, it's not about driving legal function to say we need more, but we need to spend less or less people. But I think that is being valued. That's very pleasing to know. From both Pratik and Mohit. Pratik, just taking on from there, uh, how do you demonstrate the value of legal to business stakeholders in your organization, especially if you're going through a tough period, whether it's the economy or the business? How do you really demonstrate that value?
I think one key bit which I have found most legal functions and GCs play, and this is again taking on from what Divya was mentioning, that she's a part of the managing committee, whether formally or informally. I think being a sounding board to the CEO or the head of whichever function, I think is key. But what I find is there is uh, there's something that most leaders would find, that when they walk up to a good GC and have a conversation, and it may be about anything, it doesn't, other than numbers. I think if somebody starts talking numbers, that'll be difficult. But anything other than that, I think just a logical conversation or XYZ thing is happening in one of our portfolio companies. How do we deal with it? So one bit is that, and I think the other bit is again going back to the transaction management and the transactions that we were talking about, the more that an investment legal role, and this of course is more specific to asset managers like us. uh, Divya and I had the pleasure of working across a deal now 6 or 7 years ago. I think it's 80 or 90% of most of the documents, again numbers aside, was some things which we could sort out amongst ourselves. We didn't need the business teams there. We didn't need the external counsels there. So just as long as and people are pleased with that. We're saving time for the business teams. Work is getting done. Transactions are getting done. You're keeping, of course, everyone updated on where things are going. So I think that's the value that people want to see that's coming to the table.
Yeah, I certainly see that in my practice, where there was a time when you did transactions or a matter and you felt that, look, if a company had a weak legal team, you would say that, look, we will be valued much more. Now I think it's the complete opposite, that if an organization has a very strong legal team, a strong GC, then I think it's organized extremely well. The GC knows what to take from whom, manages exceedingly well, and it's really a pleasure and delight then to work. And we've certainly seen that shift in what's happening in the GC practice. Uh, let's move to some of the challenges. So, Divya, what are the most significant challenges you face in attracting and retaining legal talent, especially mid-level lawyers in your in-house team?
This is, I'm sure all of us will resonate of the pains of. I think a large part of the GC role is actually managing a team of people and ensuring that you have the right resources in place. I think some of the challenges that we face are traditional challenges, which things like compensation and perks. In-house teams very often can't match what a law firm will offer, and that just becomes at a mid-level. It's difficult to attract and retain people because they see growth, monetary growth outside way faster than they may see in an in-house role. The other piece that happens is in terms of just structured growth. So when you're in a law firm, you can see the partnership in horizon. When you're in an in-house role, those GC roles are few and far between. So that the feeling of maybe it'll take me more time to grow to that GC role becomes a challenge, and retaining people at that level is difficult. I think the newer issues that have been happening over the last couple of years, I think, is in terms of expectation from the legal team, really. So, for example, when I'm looking at what I'm expected to deliver, I'm not just expected to deliver my pure legal function. So, obviously, my the amount of time I spend outside of work, getting ahead of issues, understanding the law, understanding nuances, evolving regulations on a global basis takes a significant amount of time. And that same expectation is there for a mid-level manager. So that the whole increased work, so you're not just doing your operational function, you're getting ahead of the law, understanding what else is happening in the world, being on top of all of that takes a significant amount of time. That results in burnout. Traditionally, a lot of people used to think you go in house and you lead a nice happy life, you go home at 5. I think those are things of the past. I don't think very many lawyers in house will say I go home at 5 and I chill out and do all of that. So those kind of things become more challenging at a mid level. So people ask, why would I be in house and not in a law firm when I'm spending the same amount of time, but I'm not getting the same compensation benefits? Which so then you really need to start developing a team which has more, which you're giving them more, not just in terms of money, but you have engaging through business. I think.
Yeah, quite. I mean, in this, in one way, we have lots and lots of lawyers, now qualifying. On the other hand, I guess recruiting the right talent at the right level is always challenging. But a related question, Devya, would be how do you balance sort of the growing demand for commercial acumen and business partnership skills with traditional competencies when you hire. Uh,
Yeah, this is something also which is, I think, I'll give an example. Recently, we got a secondee for a function and indirect tax. And secondee is really, really smart, but he believes everything that the business team tells him. If they send him data, he just believes because he's from a law firm where if a client sends data, you believe it and you go ahead and do your filings. He believes them. He's pure stickler for this is the law, this is what should happen next steps, right? But in an in-house role, you spend a lot of time, you have to engage with business, you have to ask them more nuanced questions to get the right answers or to draw data from them. So when we are recruiting, we are not just looking for the pure functional skill. A lot of actually I spend when I'm doing interviews, the first 15 minutes is just seeing attitude, communication skills,
Very yeah,
need to uh, uh, attitude to want to learn more, do more, not get overwhelmed with facts, not get overwhelmed with the fact that things are changing constantly and the expectations are changing. So that attitude of I can still manage is very important. I think communication skills, soft skills, empathy with business, understanding that they have their challenges, but you still need to give them a solution. You need to explain where the risk is, but give them solutions, right? So you need people who are able to do a whole lot more than just your pure legal technical function. So I think that's broadly these are the things I look at when I'm hiring these days at whatever level across the board, actually.
amazing, amazing. Would you, Divya, for example, take your legal team to some of your factories, get them to attend business presentations?
Absolutely.
Uh,
So, no, no, absolutely. As part of induction, what we are now doing is we're getting, so just as an example, consumer products business, we have factories across. So we get people to go to the factories, see what the process is. We get the R&D team to actually walk us through the process for each category of product. What are the ingredients? What is the process? What is the science behind it? Why are we in that business? So once you appreciate all of that, the next time there's a new product, you understand and you can give more nuanced response, right? Otherwise, you'll just say, hey, law says this is okay, this is not okay. So a lot of knowledge in the background is required, and that also engages people. As in, a lot of people who join in-house are not joining, and that's why maybe some of the risks I said about hiring in terms of compensation not matching, etc. Those sometimes don't matter because these other things take over, where you're understanding business, you're more engaged in development of a product, or more engaged in development of things, and that really helps.
No, that's
And
very
and
interesting. Even
yeah,
sorry, just
no, go ahead.
chiming in here. Even for us, it's very interesting to we. I do like going on site visits whenever you're looking at a new asset, and like the way I was saying, it's interesting to understand, for example, if you're looking at a data center, to understand how it works, because it all eventually it all needs to flow into the contract, be it the warranty section in an SPA or be it the MSA that you're looking to sign or whatever it is. It really does give a lot of insight if you've actually seen the asset with your eyes and see how it functions.
And just to add to
Absolutely.
what Prateek
Yeah.
said, I remember I was doing this East-West gas pipeline, the contracts and stuff, and I was at Reliance at that time. I did this beautiful contract, and I went and met my senior, and I said, the contract's all ready. He said, do you know what pigging is? I'm like, I have no idea. He said, what contract have you drafted if you don't know how you'll test the product? How you'll test that pipeline? If you don't know that, you don't know anything. Go back, please read, go through all of that and then come back to the contract, right? So, like Pratik said, you really need to know the process to be able to deliver well across.
Yeah. No, no. Again, very interesting how you all have developed your legal departments, and it just shows, your leadership and the way you've got talent. And I think it also makes work much more interesting. I mean, yes, it adds a lot of value, but then if you're in-house and you have sort of a connect to business, you also feel a sense of ownership when you're very well connected to the business. Well, thank you for that, Mohit. Let's move to another area for recruitment. Let's look at regulation, and let's look at certain areas. And just to ask you, which areas of regulation, such as data privacy, competition, ESG, or anti-bribery, what are really currently the greatest compliance burden for in-house legal teams?
Oh, there's a
And
rich
I ask
field out
financial services leader.
there. There's a very, very rich field out there of of many regulations that are occupying mind space. So certainly, one of them that you mentioned, data privacy, is certainly, I think, on our minds collectively as lawyers in this country at this point of time, given how new that law is, and we are still waiting on the rules in their final form to understand what the implementation is going to look like and what we'll need to do there. So that's certainly top of mind for one. I think the cybersecurity space, certainly as it evolves and becomes more complex in terms of its expectations and requirements, is another that we're looking at. ESG, sustainability, all of that area, the green, the blue, all of that is also, as it evolves and gets more and more embedded. And taxonomy is evolving in India at this point of time in terms of what it means for people. So all of these areas very new in their own way, very complex, and certainly food for thought in terms of how do you best land it. I think one of the biggest complexities that faces legal functions when they look at new law, new regulation, is how do you simplify it sufficiently enough to be able to actually implement it successfully? Because the more complex the regulation is, the more it becomes an imperative to break it down, simplify it so that it is possible to implement. Because if you just take something and fling it at somebody saying, here it is, in all its complexity, with its definitions and with its requirements, and say, go do, likely the outcome is going to be a freeze. People will say, I don't know what you want from me. I don't understand what you're saying. So it is one of those implied obligations that legal takes on, which is basically, let me take a crack at it. Let me simplify it. Let me define for you what the contours are and what you need to do within those contours to be able to comply. So earlier in this conversation, we talked a little bit about, what's strictly legal, and what's not. And notwithstanding the fact that it's not strictly legal, we have to get involved. This is one of those things. You just have to do it because I think Pratik mentioned the fact that perhaps lawyers are able to think in a more structured way, not that it makes them more intelligent or better than their counterparts, but it's just, I think, the benefit of the education, the legal education, is such that it allows us to, think in terms of steps: step one, step two, step three, and how do you break it down, and how do you, clearly articulate it. With that benefit, I think a lot of that onus can be taken on by the legal function, and should, in my mind, be taken on by the legal function, because it is something we can do, and it benefits people then, who then interact with that requirement, and then take it forward to implementation. So many such things, I agree. And uh, the markets regulator, the banking regulator also, as I mentioned, as I had occasion to mention before, are also very active in terms of what it takes to, keep the financial system sound, what regulation is required. So that's a very, very rapidly evolving space. There's also reaction that regulation has to judicial rulings. So there's regulation that comes out of that too. And timelines are usually very tight in terms of just what is needed. So sometimes these things are just flung like fireballs into our laps, and you just have to get it done, right? Because it is imperative, it's time bound, it just needs to be there. So it's a very, very live space.
No, certainly very onerous from what it sounds. Divya, are there any, in addition to what Mohit has said, are there one or two focused areas from a regulatory space in your area which you focus on?
I think right now the maximum mind space is for us at least has been on data privacy and ESG. Data privacy because we have operations across the globe, and for example, Indonesia has had a new law which got implemented last year. Parts of Africa have had a new law. India, we still, like Mohit said, still figuring out what the law is. So we have spent a lot of time last year doing gap analysis, then drafting policies, and then training teams on implementation. Because I remember the conversation began with someone in one of the teams saying, "We don't collect any data." And we were like, how can you not collect any data? When people walk into the office, they fill that register, which gives their phone number and name. That's data for you. So it begins from there to explain to teams what is the data you're collecting, then figuring out stepwise what needs to be done across the organization. So that's been a big, and also ensuring that you're taking care of local nuances while ensuring you have a one consistent policy across the group. So that becomes also significantly challenging. I'm sure Mohit and Pratik, you guys will face the same thing given global organizations. The other piece for us has been ESG because we got onto the Dow Jones Sustainability Index last year. We were the
Relations.
top country in top company for consumer goods products from India, which meant that a whole lot of time went around having policies which are robust, doing diligence, doing monitoring, and then also going beyond what the law says. So that was quite a significant achievement, and I think most of last year went in ensuring that compliance really.
And Pratik, in your industry or in your sectors which you see, how are legal teams navigating sort of the shifting environment, regulatory environment? Uh,
Um, I would, in my experience, I would say the regulator has largely moved in a positive direction. The key positive being they're a lot more approachable than what we've seen globally, be it the CCI, be it SEBI, be it RBI, be it any of the key regulators. You can speak to them, you can discuss regulations with them, you can discuss consultation papers with them. An example which comes to mind, last year uh, we applied to the CCI for acquisition of American Tower's India business, and we already had a large tower platform. So it was Form 2, and we had to take CCI through a bunch of information. What I found very interesting was that while, of course, the councils were dealing with most of it, I got a call from the council saying that, look, the CCI wants to understand how do these towers technically work, because you've given multiple types of towers. They actually want to understand how it works. So I was like, sure, let me turn up. Like, how much they want to know, as much as I know, and that should be good enough. And I did go and try to explain, and that definitely wasn't sufficient. Then we had to get a couple of technical guys in, explain everything to them. So that's the level of interaction, and they're more than happy to do that. And it's not, uh, it's them being inquisitive again about what are they approving, what is it. It's not just, oh, let's define market, it's X and Y, and let's give an approval. So which is great, I think, because once they understand what exactly the product is, I think the regulator also benefits from it, and so do the regulations overall.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing that candidly. And moving to you, Mohit, let's talk a little bit about risk. Uh, how do you see the role of in-house legal departments evolving in risk oversight? And if you can share some of your thoughts.
Sure. That risk, I think, is top of mind, always has been, but more so now than probably because I think previously all of us, as Divya also mentioned early, I think organizations as they were evolving and as legal functions were becoming embedded, um, consciously or unconsciously, there were defined areas of responsibility. You did what was expected of you from the perspective of, oh, you're a lawyer, okay, you know the law, okay, you know how to draft a contract, and therefore you're done. You're told what the contours of a transaction are, or what a regulation says about a policy framework, and you go and draft it and put it out, and there you're done. Or you've got litigation to deal with, so you have that interaction across the organization and with litigation counsel and managing litigation. Risk is um, not so clearly embedded in one pocket or the other anymore. The world is definitely more complex, for one. And given how complex it is, just defining yourself as legal risk or credit risk or market risk or any other area of risk, compliance risk, if you will, is good because it gives people their anchor and their core to address. But then as leaders in our own organizations, we also have to think more broadly with respect to what it means in terms of what is not so defined, but is something that people should look at because it may matter. So, there are those nuanced aspects that come into play, which we all think about, reputation for one. Um, Fallout in the future if you were to take a certain step in a certain manner today because it is necessary or because it is imperative or because it is what the framework permits. But then how will it play out maybe a year from now or a couple of years from now We may not have the answers, but we have to think about what we can do so that we are able to address it as we go forward. So conversations of that nature, which are not so tangible but necessary, are part of how you address risk. And you should look at this that from the perspective of how you then are able to then make the difference that can help somebody, take a more informed decision. Uh, we will, of course, as lawyers, be required to focus on legal risk because that's our area, right? So people will expect that legal risk is what we address. But the richness of it is that legal risk is associated with so much more. It's not something you can cocoon and say this is where it begins and this is where it ends, because there's so much that is inherent, there's so much that is unspoken, there's so much that is undefined and associated with legal risk. So you have to be able to uh, understand what moves in the compliance risk vertical, what moves in the credit risk vertical, what is the business thinking about and why. And addressing risks of this nature, Haigreve, takes you back to the trust component. You have to be able to, as Prateek said, uh, embed that trust in people so that they're able to come and tell you what it is that is defining or educating their approach to a particular thing, so that you're able to then weigh in and provide input in terms of maybe do it this way, maybe option B is better, maybe option A is not so good, because of XYZ reasons that you should also be thinking about. So that is how I think lawyers can do a great job in terms of being able to have those conversations, build that trust, and chime in, uh, even if it's not their domain of expertise or specialty. And as Divya said, asking questions therefore becomes very important. Asking questions in the right way becomes very important, because it all comes together. At the end of the day, you're delivering for the enterprise, you're delivering for your client, you're delivering for the stakeholders who matter in terms of the decisions that an organization takes. And that is why not being cocooned or sequestrated into this is the legal domain, this is what I deal with, I either say yes or no, or I look at this regulation and tell you what it is, does not suffice. You have to have that curiosity and that buy-in in terms of being able to ask questions, go have conversations, and chime in where it's important without second guessing yourself, saying, should I speak? You should speak, because that's the way you address risk.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I must admit that, this has been a huge learning, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate this, of the way you defined mitigating and addressing risk from a legal perspective. And what I heard, long term, not so tangible, making a difference, embedding trust, and having the curiosity. And I think that is the true value you to bring to addressing risk. In most businesses, one deals with, we are doing lip service to risk, to say, okay, we have to have a risk compliance, rather than, the way you've addressed it. I think this is really invaluable for our audience. Let me move to another section, which I think audience has been waiting for, very topical, and that is AI. So, Divya, asking you, how is your legal team currently using AI tools? Where do you see the greatest potential for AI to change the way in-house legal teams are functioning? And what do you see it in the next 12 to 24 months?
Thanks. I would go back to what Mohit said, that we're all, I think, somewhere in the early stages of this. Everyone talks AI, everyone says we are using AI, we're doing a lot of things. A lot of things are not necessarily so evolved or so definitive today. I think we do some things which are good. We have Chat GPT Enterprise, we have Microsoft Copilot. People are still exploring and figuring out ways to use it. As a function itself, and that's more organization wide, as a function itself, we are today using litigation management tool, and that's more a tool just to keep ourselves on top of the litigations that we have. We do legal research using, say, a ChatGPT Enterprise, using Manupatra, using a bunch of other tools. We have an in-house built workflow tool, which kind of helps maintain TAT, turnaround time, and things of that nature. I think contract lifecycle management is still one of those things we are evaluating. We have come across multiple promise tools with great AI efficiency, etc. But historically, people have been using contract lifecycle management more as a warehouse rather than actually something which customizes and brings great value to people. So I think we are evaluating at this stage a bunch of tools to see what is best suited for the organizational needs and for the organizational maturity you have. And I think different, for example, I think for a banking or a regulated sector, the requirements may be vastly different from what a consumer products company or a chemicals company would do. So I think those nuances we'll have to look at. But the way I think about the next 12 to 24 months, I'd really think democratize knowledge. Today, what every time a business person has to pick up the phone and ask my team member, when does this contract expire? What does the clause say? What does this mean? They can go to a chat GPT and get that answer way faster than my team member can read the contract. So that's going to happen increasingly. You don't have to provide that kind of service as a function. The other piece that will happen, and this will affect, I think, both law firms and in-house teams, is places like due diligence or contract summarization or case law summarization. All of that will happen way faster, and that won't you won't need to have a resource-heavy team to do those kind of things. There'll be operational efficiency that will come from there. I think the most interesting space may be predictive kind of analysis that an AI tool can do for you. So, for example, tell you how the law will evolve or how compliance metrics will change, things like that. That's where really I see value in terms of helping us with doing the thought leadership that's expected of us. Rather than just creating efficiencies or making life a little easier for you. I think that's what would be most challenging and fun to see AI help us with.
Wow, very, very, very interesting. And when you say predictive, we had a client, actually ask us that, look, we have this matter before this court and before this judge, and can you do research as to, what sort of view this judge has taken on these kinds of matters, and then if we apply that to AI and get AI to predict the sort of judgment that would come because of a particular judge. I mean, that would be really fascinating. But yes, let's see how times evolve. But over to you, Pratik and Mohit. While we talk about AI, what governance challenges do you think are emerging as we adopt AI tools, and how are legal teams responding to some of the issues around legal and ethical risks?
Uh, I'll go first on the. I think we are, like we've been discussing, we are at a very early stage in terms of how we are uh, adopting or adapting to AI, which is why I don't think even from a governance perspective, I don't even think people are even thinking about that as of now, from whatever little I've read. There's some states in the US which are still trying to figure out what is the more social impact of using AI as opposed to coming down to what are the legal or ethical risks of doing something like that. I mean, some of this actually sounds like a Black Mirror episode to me. The kind of things, like if we can if AI is as specific as or it can get to a place where it's as specific as reading every judgment that a particular judge has given all their lives in their 20, 30-year career and say, okay, this is the more likely outcome, and which seems very, very real. It's very, very doable if as long as AI has all the data. So I think that's where that's those are the sort of things that we need to be careful about. What is ethically used and otherwise, and then going to the bit about summarizing contracts, etc., and how law firm teams need to be can be lesser on resources and faster turnaround time, etc. There also, I think between in-house teams and law firms, there needs to be a bit of a collaboration. Uh, we as in-house teams also need to know exactly what is an AI product and what isn't. There are times when we are unreasonable and say, okay, I need these 6 contracts summarized overnight, and it's not humanly possible. And we have to be okay with an AI product, which can, of course, get finessed and rechecked and all of that over the course of the next day. But if you want something, we also need to be ready with that. And so that's the sort of partnership we need to work on as well.
Not true. The bells and whistles are still on the way. So it's being very thoughtfully and carefully being looked at. So, measured approach is what it is. I agree with this point of time, saying what can we do with it and how best can we deploy it. So my sense is that it's going to be a bit of a slow uptake as people digest how and what it can do for people and help them do their work more effectively. So it is work in progress. But yes, definitely, I think from a focus point of view at this point of time, the quick wins that people are looking at are things like document summarization, case law summarization. How does it help you create minutes and decks? So those are the areas. And the word of caution always is that for anybody using it is please don't just rely on it. Double check it before it goes anywhere. So yes.
Great guidance and thought. It's we are getting to the end of our session, but before we do that, I have one question, and then maybe we'll take one audience question, maybe by 5 minutes. Let me ask all three of you. How are you re-evaluating your relationships with law firms? What matters now? Price, responsiveness, sector expertise, or innovation? So uh, just assume I'm not sitting here while you answer this. So please go ahead.
Sure, I can start. I would think that actually it's all four, and I think that's what may be the most challenging thing because you're always balancing all four of these. You're looking for people who have sectoral expertise that can deliver services with the greatest efficiency possible and with the most responsiveness. Increasingly, what happens, and purely from experience, uh, I would go to a law firm which picks up the phone and gives me, even if they're saying, okay, this is broadly what we think, we'll come back to you, we need to do more research, than someone who doesn't pick up the phone saying, I need to finish my research and then I will respond. So, communication, ability to respond quickly, being strategically understanding the business requirements. So, given the increased expectation from the in-house team, you expect that the partners you work with will understand that requirement from your end, and they will supplement and support you in that. Right? That's what you're looking for. You're not looking, and like people are not looking at us in-house to just say yes, no to a position in law. You're looking at your law firm partners to give you the same kind of support, not just to give you a yes, no answer. And cost pressures are always there. I don't think any GC would say we are okay, no budgets, go for it. So there's constant pressure on costs, and of course quality. And I think uh, the approach has always been that for quality you don't mind paying the cost. So it's not about cutting costs, but about managing costs. So I think where there's transparency and things like that, then so you balance all of these factors when you work with law firms. And I think we all evaluate very often these factors when we are looking to engage with law firms.
What would you say, Mohit and Pratik?
Sorry, Mohit, you cut off for a bit
I
there.
said, you want to go
Yeah,
first?
Sure. No, no, I completely agree. While price is like Divya said, always a factor, but it's boils down to what you're paying for. Uh, for us, it's never the law firm. It's always finding the right partner to partner with on a deal, literally, and how we work through a life cycle of an asset. We did do the, and we've done that multiple times. We have the same partner who'd done the acquisition, worked through the life cycle of an asset, dealt with all its issues, and helped us with the sale. So it just helps with getting that sort of confidence with each and every partner. So the highest fee earner from X law firm might not be the best suited partner for a particular transaction. So finding that right person, I think, is most important, and that's the sort of relationship that we would look at and cherish when we are looking to work with someone. Sorry, Mohit.
Thank you. No, definitely, all four certainly matter, but yes, the right price for the right advice matters too. Accessibility matters in terms of being able to have a conversation with respect to something that might be on your mind. You might need a sounding board for something you're thinking about. That matters. Ability to have a quick conversation when required, therefore, it becomes very, very, very important because crises develop all the time. Uh, so all four matter, but definitely accessibility matters, and the quality of what comes in as advice matters from the perspective of it being well-rounded. In-house counsel will look at law firms for that treasured perspective that comes from a law firm have dealing with many clients who may be dealing with the same issue, but as each one of them looks at that issue and comes to a law firm, nuances can be very different depending on which industry it is or what the particular perspective is that is bothering them. I think a lot of us value that input that can come in from a law firm in terms of that very well-rounded view, because you know what's happening with very many people. You know what's happening in the market because you know that all those many people are looking at this issue. So, and we may have less of it at a particular point of time because we focused on the organization that we work with. So that is, I think, something we treasure immensely in an interaction with a law firm, with a partner, is that because that is invaluable.
So, thank you to all of you. I think this has been truly insightful and interesting. I think we are coming to the end of our session, but we couldn't have done this without each of you. And thank you for giving your time. I know how each one of your schedules work, so thank you very much. I know we have a lot of audience questions, but I think we are already over time, so. Uh, if any of you has any observations, but otherwise, I'd really like to thank each one of you. uh, and then there is a audience poll slide for the audience next to on your screen, and you can give feedback on today's webinar. We take uh, you know uh, all of the feedback very seriously for our continuous improvement. So thank you everyone for those who participated in the poll. Finally, I'd like to thank all our panel members for sharing their expertise and experience with us today. You were simply outstanding. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the audience for your attention and your questions. I hope you found the webinar interesting and worthwhile investment of your time. We certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. After this webinar, we will send you copies of today's presentation material, summary notes, and a link to the webinar recording. You will also separately receive a request for your feedback on the webinar. Please take your time to send us your feedback, comments, criticism, and even compliments. Uh, it takes less than a minute to complete the form. If you're interested in in-house training or other matters arising from the webinar, please do not hesitate to contact us. Our contact information is on the contact slide. And thank you for your attendance today and look forward to being with you again at in-house counsel program. Thank you. Thank you, each one of you, Divya, Mohit, and Pratik.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
again. This was very interesting.
you.
Thanks.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye bye.